So I think what makes an entrepreneurship scene is really what makes up any vibrant scene. And first you have to have a diverse number of and a critical mass of communities and organizations that make up the scene. That's your starting point. In order to have a scene, you've got to have enough things going on in the scene. But after you get enough of those collections, then the next challenge becomes coordination and collaboration amongst the scene. So I'd say that in Austin, we're kind of in that second stage of scene development, where we are beginning to really coordinate our efforts, not just do individual efforts that happen, so that there's less collision of things that people are doing, there's more sharing of resources, there's basically increasing the capacity of the scene by increasing coordination. The third piece is the evangelizing of the scene. So a scene has a unique identity to itself, and people talk about the scene as a thing. It's like its own organism, its own thing, and we talk about the scene in that term. So having that identity, part of that is also the scene being aware of itself. So mapping the scene, what makes up the scene, and people talking about it that way. And your final piece, I think, is just your evangelizing of the scene, so that the scene has awareness beyond its own borders to others that, let's say, the larger city or the world knows about the scene as being that.
If what makes a scene, okay, is this unique combination of experiences and how communities aggregate around experiences, then a scene is really that collection of communities that are all sharing common experiences. That's what creates the scene. That's what the entrepreneurship scene is. This amazing eclectic array of communities that are gathering under that umbrella of entrepreneurship. Well, we've been talking a lot about how scenes, as Bejoy said, are comprised of communities. And communities, of course, are full of active, engaged individuals. So one of the things you have to do is make sure that you're actively engaging the individuals and the communities in the scene, so that the scene can begin to thrive and take on its own identity. In doing that, we're talking about how you promote healthy communities in a lot of ways, by making sure that people feel very clear about what the protocols are in those communities, what the leadership is in those communities, what the appropriate behaviors are, what to do, what not to do. And once you give people those parameters in a loose and loving way, then they have the opportunity to engage in whatever way feels right to them. And that's really what begins to create that organic feeling of a scene developing. It's not a construct, it's an organic entity that develops within these constraints.
Well, there's clearly, an economic impact in terms of entrepreneurship in every city is going to be the engine that creates the new jobs within that city. So you look at even Austin, Whole Foods, National Instruments, Dell, these are our large organizations, and we have a lot of others that we know that are like Alamo Drafthouse and Runtex and so on and so forth. So, to me, the scene, there's two things. One is the entrepreneurship scene is really an expression of that city's unique personality. That's really what came out of the discussion that we just had, which is the flavor of entrepreneurship in Silicon Valley or Denver or Boston is going to emerge out of the city's personality. So you're really talking about how you connect community level stuff to real economic drivers, and we see some of these older ones like Detroit, which is maybe now a city in a rebirth of its, but in the 50s and 30s when Detroit was on the ascent, it created a huge economic impact both for Detroit and for the country at large.